And we are back with Isaac Sturgill and Josie Williams. They're helping you through some difficult rental situations. And boy, since we started this, we've been receiving a lot of questions from people. No surprise here. So I'm just going to start going through them. The first question would probably be for Isaac. Is there a percentage max that landlords can raise your rent?
So there's actually not in North Carolina. There's actually a law in North Carolina that says that local counties and cities are not allowed to pass rent control measures. And so that's something where the state of North Carolina has decided to take that authority away from cities and counties. And so there's not actually any kind of legal rent control that's in North Carolina. That would have to change at the state level to make that happen. However, normally landlords cannot just unilaterally raise the rent. So what they can do is they can ask the tenant to agree to a higher rate of rent. If the tenant refuses, the landlord may choose not to renew the lease at that point. But usually it would take an agreement from both parties to raise the rent.
Josie, explain the importance of not withholding your rent if you're having an issue with your landlord.
Unfortunately, in North Carolina, you cannot withhold a rent for having issues or even for issues regarding lack of maintenance. The thing to do at that point is contact an attorney like at Legal Aid so they can see if you have a defense. But it is not proper to hold the rent even despite the challenges. It just puts you far behind. We do help you negotiate and mediate with the landlord so we can come up to some type of agreement until there's a resolve. But it is not appropriate to withhold the rent, unfortunately.
And I agree with that. I think that that's a risky move for tenants to withhold rent because what's going to happen, you're going to end up in eviction court and you're going to have to defend yourself at that point. The safest thing for tenants to do is to keep paying the rent. And if the landlord continues to refuse to make repairs, that tenant may have a legal claim that they could file against the landlord to get some of that rent back from the landlord. We call that rent abatement. And so if the landlord's refusing to make repairs, the tenant may be able to file a lawsuit to get some of that rent money back.
And Isaac, people will often say to us, well, you know, I called my landlord, I asked them to do this, I've called them. Explain why it's important to get it in writing.
So under state law, most requests for repairs do not have to be in writing legally, but it's always a good idea to do it in writing. And when I say in writing, that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, snail mail, like a handwritten letter. It could be a text message, it could be an email. But the reason why, even though usually you're not required to do it, why it's a good idea is because if you end up in court in front of a judge or a jury, you want to have proof that you put the landlord on notice, right? So one of the things you'd have to prove as a tenant, if you're making a claim like that, is that you notify the landlord about the repairs that needed to be made.
Josie, someone sent us a text message saying that their landlord is kicking them out to move in a person who is on Section 8. Is that allowed?
Unfortunately, yes. The landlord has the right to not renew the lease. He has the right to ask you to move, and he can move in anyone that he wants. We see the issue a lot, to be honest. We are seeing folks that are refusing to take Section 8, and we are now seeing folks that will try to evict someone legally just to bring another type of tenant in that they feel they can make a better profit of. That's the reality of what we're seeing in our housing environment right now.
And, you know, I want to make it clear that landlords are not the enemy here. You know, we keep talking about issues with landlords and tenants having, you know, disputes over whatever it is. But I imagine that both of you also hear from landlords who are in a situation where they just can't, I mean, they're dealing with plenty of issues of their own, correct?
Yeah, we see a lot of landlords that let us know that they, you know, they simply can't make the mortgage on the home that that the tenant is renting if they cannot receive the rent. That's totally understandable. We do have a program at JHC. We try to partner with the landlord, and it's a partnership between the property owner and the tenant and our agency. And what it does over the long haul, we partner with those individuals throughout the term of the lease. We offset some of the costs for someone to get in it, and in return, we try to offset some of the maintenance that a landlord might have at the end of the lease or during the lease. What it does we just want to build a strong relationship with those that own property, so that when the next tenant comes along looking for housing, I have a strong relationship with those that own the property, so we can keep bringing tenants in and getting them housed.
Okay, I think that's a good spot to take another quick break here. Isaac and Josie, thank you for your assistance. We'll be right back after this.